The thing about galactic archaeology is that everyone assumes humans are the new kids on the block. We showed up late to the party, stumbled into faster-than-light travel about 200 years ago, and generally acted like the universe's most enthusiastic golden retriever. So when Professor Velkrin of the Thromalian Institute discovered a 10,000-year-old warning carved into a massive stone obelisk on the remote colony world of New Tasmania, nobody expected the maintenance guy to ruin everything. The excavation site looked like every other dig in the galaxy. Fancy equipment, pretentious scientists, and one very bored human in coveralls holding a plasma torch. That would be me. Marcus Webb, professional janitor, amateur disappointment to xenarchaeologists everywhere. Velkrin was practically vibrating with excitement, all four of his eyes gleaming as he examined the ancient script. He was tall, blue, and had way too many tentacles for someone who kept gesturing dramatically. His voice boomed across the dig site like he was announcing the second coming of sliced bread. Extraordinary! This warning predates human spaceflight by nearly 8 millennia. The linguistic structure suggests a highly advanced civilization attempted to warn future generations about a catastrophic event. The precision of these markings, the mathematical formulas embedded in the text, this is unprecedented. His assistant, a nervous little Crebian named Pip, was frantically scanning everything with devices that beeped way too much. Pip looked like someone had given anxiety a physical form and added antenna. She or he, I never really figured it out with Crebians, kept chattering in that high-pitched voice that made me want to check if my dental fillings were secure. Professor, the carbon dating confirms it. 10,312 years, give or take a decade. The material is indigenous to this planet, but the tools used to carve it? Nothing in our database matches. And the language, sir, it has got grammatical structures we have never encountered in any known civilization from that era. The security chief, a hulking Vraxian named Torque, stood nearby with his arms crossed, looking like someone had carved a boulder into the shape of disappointment and given it a really bad attitude. Vraxians were built like tanks that went to the gym, and Torque had the personality of a parking ticket. I still think this is a waste of resources, Torque grumbled. We should be surveying for mineral deposits, not playing in the dirt with ancient graffiti. I was trying to fix a busted environmental control unit about 20 feet away, not really paying attention until Velkrin started reading the translation out loud. That is when I made my mistake. I looked up. The warning was carved in 3-foot-tall letters across a stone face that had to weigh several tons. The script was elegant, flowing, with mathematical formulas interwoven through the text, like someone had gotten really creative with their doom and gloom prophecy. And I recognized it immediately because I wrote the damn thing during a particularly boring winter about 10,000 years ago. Beware the return of the Void Shepherds, Velkrin translated, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper that probably worked great at dinner parties. When the twin stars align with the third moon of the wandering giant, they shall emerge from the space between spaces. No weapon of crude matter shall harm them. Only the prepared shall survive. The count begins at the celestial convergence. You have been warned by the witness of ages. I should have kept my mouth shut. I really should have. But I had been working a double shift. My coffee had run out 3 hours ago, and I was tired of these scientists treating New Tasmania like their personal sandbox. That is my handwriting, I said, not even looking up from my repairs. The entire dig site went silent. Even the equipment seemed to stop beeping. Velkrin's tentacles froze mid-gesture. Pip dropped her scanner. Torque just stared at me like I had announced I was made of cheese. Excuse me? Velkrin finally managed, his translator struggling to convey what I assumed was profound confusion mixed with academic outrage. My handwriting, I repeated, finally looking up and pointing my plasma torch at the obelisk for emphasis. I carved that. Winter of, carry the one, about 8,287 BC by your calendar. Really cold that year. Took me 3 weeks because I kept having to warm my hands up. You know that moment when you say something at a party and everyone stops talking? Imagine that, but with alien scientists who have spent the last 6 months carefully excavating what they thought was the find of the century, only to have the janitor casually claim he scribbled it during a particularly harsh winter. Velkrin's tentacles went through what I can only describe as the 5 stages of grief in fast forward. That is impossible. You are clearly joking. Human humor is so difficult to parse sometimes, but this is not funny, Mr. Webb. Not joking, I said, going back to my repair work. The environmental unit was being a pain, and I was hoping this conversation would just go away if I ignored it long enough. Spoiler alert, it did not. Pip recovered her scanner with trembling hands. But sir, humans only achieved spaceflight 2 centuries ago. This carving is 10,000 years old. The human is clearly suffering from some kind of mental break. Should we call medical? I am standing right here, I pointed out, and I'm fine. Well, fine is relative. I have been alive for about 12,000 years, give or take a few centuries. I lose track sometimes. Wrote that warning because, well, you will find out soon enough if the math still works. Torque stepped forward, his massive frame blocking out the sun and most of my will to live. You expect us to believe you are 12,000 years old? Humans live, what, a century if they are lucky. Usually, yeah, I agreed, finally giving up on the environmental unit and setting down my tools. I am what you would call a statistical anomaly, also known as a massive cosmic screw-up, depending on who you ask. Velkrin had progressed from denial to anger. His academic pride was showing, and it was not a good look. This is absurd. I have 3 doctoral degrees. I have spent 40 years studying ancient civilizations. And you expect me to believe that our groundbreaking discovery is actually just vandalism by an immortal human janitor? Technically, it was not vandalism, I corrected. I lived here, well, nearby. About 40 miles east, there was this great valley with fresh water and decent hunting. I owned the place by default of being the only sentient being on the entire planet. So really, it was more like leaving myself a note. Pip was scanning me now, her device beeping frantically. Professor, his cellular structure is, I have never seen anything like this. His cells are regenerating at an impossible rate. It is like his biology is in a constant state of renewal. How is this possible? Lab accident, I said with a shrug. 12,000 years ago, I was part of an early human civilization you all never found because we had the good sense to not leave a lot of trash lying around. We were experimenting with genetic modifications, trying to cure diseases, extend lifespans, the usual mad science stuff. Something went wrong, really wrong, and everyone else died. I got stuck like this. Immortal, unkillable, and deeply, deeply tired of filling out tax forms across multiple millennia. Velkrin was pacing now, his tentacles gesturing wildly. Even if, and I stress, if you are telling the truth, how could you know about the Void Shepherds? That term appears nowhere in galactic databases. We assumed it was a mythological reference to some ancient cosmic fear. Because I have met them, I said flatly. Twice, actually. Once 12,000 years ago, which is why I know they exist. And once about 10,000 years ago, which is when I carved that warning. They show up every 10,000 years when the celestial alignment happens. It is kind of their thing. And before you ask, yes, they are exactly as terrible as the warning suggests. The security chief pulled out his weapon, not pointing it at me but clearly ready to. If you have encountered a hostile alien species twice, why is there no record of it? Why have you not reported this to galactic authorities? Because galactic authorities did not exist yet, I said patiently. The first time they showed up, I was alone on this rock with about 200 other humans who all died pretty quick. The second time, I had learned a few things and managed to survive again, but there was nobody to report to. I spent the next several thousand years wandering around, trying to figure out what to do with immortality, and eventually I just got a job as a janitor because the pension plan seemed irrelevant. Pip was still scanning, her voice shaking. Professor, I am detecting trace elements in the stone carving that match the human's current biochemistry. And there are microscopic skin cells embedded in the deeper cracks of the letters. The DNA is human, and it is degraded in a way consistent with 10,000-year-old organic material. But it also matches his current genetic signature. Velkrin looked like someone had just told him his entire academic career was a cosmic joke. Which, to be fair, I kind of had. So you're saying, he began slowly, that you carved this warning 10,000 years ago about a threat that appears every 10,000 years. And you have been just, waiting around for it to happen again. Not just waiting, I corrected. I have been preparing. You do not survive 12,000 years by being stupid. Well, not entirely stupid. I have had my moments. Torque holstered his weapon, but kept his hand near it, which I appreciated. At least someone was taking this seriously, even if he was also clearly considering whether I needed to be detained for psychological evaluation. Explain, Velkrin demanded, his academic authority trying to reassert itself. Explain everything. I sighed and sat down on a nearby crate. This was going to take a while. Okay, so 12,000 years ago, humanity was actually pretty advanced. Not like spaceship advanced, but we had cities, agriculture, some early genetic science. My people were trying to extend human lifespans. We succeeded way too well with me and catastrophically failed with everyone else. The treatment killed them within weeks. I got to watch everyone I knew die while I stayed perfectly healthy. Pip had settled down and was actually taking notes now. That must have been traumatic. You have no idea, I agreed. But trauma is a long-term investment, when you have got forever to deal with it. Anyway, I was alone for about 2,000 years, just surviving, exploring, trying not to go completely insane. Then the Void Shepherds showed up the first time. Describe them, Torque ordered. Imagine if something crawled out of the space between dimensions and decided physics was more of a suggestion than a rule. They do not have a fixed form. Sometimes they look like shadows with too many angles. Sometimes they look like nothing at all, just an absence of reality. They feed on consciousness, specifically complex thought patterns. The more advanced your brain, the tastier you are to them. Velcrin shuddered, all four eyes blinking in sequence. How did you survive? Dumb luck and primitive technology, I said. They showed up, started harvesting the few other human settlements that existed. I watched entire cities go dark. People just stopped. Their minds were eaten, leaving empty shells. But I noticed something. They avoided areas with high electromagnetic interference. Thunderstorms, natural magnetic anomalies, that kind of thing. So I hid in a cave system with a lot of ferromagnetic deposits and waited them out. How long did they stay? Pip asked. 3 months, I said. 3 very long months of hiding in the dark, eating bats, and wondering if I would spend eternity alone. They eventually left, just vanished back into whatever hole they crawled out of. I spent the next 8,000 years researching, trying to understand them, preparing for their return. Velcrin was listening intently now, his academic curiosity overriding his skepticism. And they returned? 10,000 years ago, right on schedule. By then, I had built some basic equipment, nothing fancy, but enough to protect a small area. I carved that warning because I figured if I died, somebody should know what happened. If I survived, well, I could always come back and add to it. Did anyone else survive? Torque asked. A few scattered groups, maybe a few hundred humans total across the planet. But most of civilization was gone again. I helped where I could, but I was one person with limited resources. After they left, I spent the next few centuries helping humanity rebuild before I got bored and wandered off. Pip looked up from her notes. That explains the genetic bottleneck human populations experienced roughly 10,000 years ago. We always assumed it was a natural disaster. It was a disaster, I said. Just not a natural one. Velcrin had moved on to the problem-solving phase. If they are returning and your calculations are correct, when will they arrive? I pulled out my personal data pad, which was hilariously outdated by modern standards, but had all my notes from the last 10 millennia. Based on the celestial alignment, we have got about 3 weeks. Maybe 4 if the orbital mechanics have drifted slightly. I have not checked in a few years. Years? Torque exploded. You have known this was coming and you did not warn anyone? I tried, I said defensively. Do you know how hard it is to get anyone to listen to the janitor about an interdimensional threat that shows up every 10,000 years? I filed 14 reports with colonial administration. They all got rejected as spam. I even tried contacting the Galactic Council. You know what they said? They said I should seek mental health services and stop bothering them with horror stories. The silence that followed was broken only by the wind whistling across the dig site. So what do we do? Pip finally asked, her voice small. Well, I said, standing up and stretching, lucky for you, I have spent 10,000 years preparing for this exact scenario. I was kind of hoping I would not need to use any of it, but here we are, again. Velcrin did what any rational scientist would do when confronted with impossible information. He had a complete academic meltdown and then immediately started making plans. Say what you want about tentacle professors, but they are excellent at compartmentalizing existential dread. We need to evacuate the colony, he announced. Get everyone off-world immediately. Will not work, I said, checking my datapad. The Void Shepherds do not just stay in one place. They will spread across this entire sector within a week of arrival. Running will just take you into their path somewhere else. Better to stay and fight. Torque looked at me like I had suggested we fight a black hole with harsh language. You said no weapon of crude matter can harm them. How exactly do we fight something that ignores physics? I said crude matter, I corrected. But I have had 10,000 years to figure out what is not crude. Follow me. I led them away from the dig site, about half a mile into the scrubland, to what looked like a completely ordinary maintenance shed. Velkrin kept looking back at his precious obelisk like I was kidnapping him from his firstborn child. This better not be a waste of time, Torque muttered. Oh, it is absolutely a waste of time, I assured him. But it is also our only shot at survival, so priorities. The shed looked normal enough. Standard prefab construction, faded paint, a lock that was mostly for show. I pressed my hand against what looked like a rust spot, and the entire floor began to descend. You have got to be kidding me, Pip squeaked as we dropped into an underground facility that was definitely not on any colonial blueprints. The elevator took us down about 200 feet into a complex that I had been building and maintaining for the last 50 years. The walls were lined with equipment that ranged from sleek and modern to absolutely ancient. Some of it I had built myself over various centuries. Some of it I had acquired through, let us call them creative interpretations of property law. Welcome to bunker number 47, I announced. I have got 132 of these scattered across the planet. This one is just the closest. Velkrin was staring at a piece of equipment that was definitely not standard maintenance gear. Is that a quantum resonance field generator? 3 of them, actually, I said. Had to cannibalize some ship drives I found over the years. The void shepherds exist partially in quantum states. Hit them with enough quantum interference and they start having a really bad time. Torque was examining what looked like a weapon. These are military-grade plasma cannons. Where did you get military-grade plasma cannons? I have been alive for 12,000 years, I said. You would be amazed what you can accumulate. Also, I may have been in a few wars. Okay, several wars. Possibly dozens. I lose count. The point is, I know what I am doing. Pip had found my main computer system and was scrolling through files with increasing horror. These are research notes on interdimensional physics dating back 8,000 years. How is this even possible? The mathematics here are more advanced than anything in current galactic databases. Turns out when you have unlimited time and strong motivation, you can figure out some pretty cool stuff, I said. I have been tracking the void shepherds across dimensional frequencies for millennia. I know how they think, how they move, how they feed. I know their weaknesses. And you never shared this information? Velkrin asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. With who? I shot back. Every civilization I have tried to warn either died, ignored me, or tried to dissect me to figure out the immortality thing. I learned a long time ago that being the weird immortal guy does not win you a lot of friends in academic circles. An alarm started blaring. My old monitoring equipment, some of it held together with spit and prayers, was picking up something. They are early, I said, checking the readouts. That is new. They have never been early before. How early? Torque demanded, his soldier instincts kicking in. About 2 weeks early. They are already breaching into our dimension. I started activating systems, my hands moving across controls I had not touched in years. Okay, change of plans. We need to get the quantum field generators online now. Pip, you are smart. Start calibrating the resonance frequencies. Specs are in file Gamma 7. Velkrin, I need you to calculate the optimal dispersion pattern for a protection grid covering the colony. Torque, you are on weapons. Think you can figure out plasma cannons? I am a Vraxian security chief, Torque growled. I was born figuring out weapons. Great, they are in the armory, through that door. Do not touch the weird glowing thing in the corner. It bites. For the next 6 hours we worked. Velkrin complained constantly, which I respected. Pip asked about 300 questions, which I also respected. Torque just grunted and assembled weapons with the focused intensity of someone who really wanted to shoot something. The monitoring equipment showed the void shepherd's arrival like a wound opening in reality. First, it was just small breaches, barely noticeable distortions in space-time. Then they started getting bigger. The screens showed shadows that moved wrong, angles that should not exist, absence of light that somehow cast darkness. That is what we are fighting? Velkrin whispered, staring at the monitors. That is what we are surviving, I corrected. Fighting implies we have a chance of winning. We do not. We have a chance of not dying, which is different. Inspiring speech, Torque said dryly, loading his 40th plasma cannon. I have had 12,000 years to work on my motivational skills, I said. This is as good as it gets. The first Void Shepherd fully manifested about 3 miles from the colony. The monitors showed reality just folding around it. Trees aged 1,000 years in seconds and crumbled to dust. The ground cracked. The air itself seemed to scream. Okay, I said, my hand hovering over the master control. Here we go. Again, the thing about planning for 10,000 years is you have time to really overcomplicate things. I had contingencies for my contingencies, backup plans for my backup plans, and a disturbing amount of explosives that I had insisted on labeling as mining equipment. Quantum field generators online, Pip reported, her voice steadier than I expected. Resonance frequencies are stable at, wait, these readings cannot be right. The harmonics are matching patterns I have only seen in theoretical physics papers. Those theoretical papers were based on my research, I said absently, watching the monitors. I published under 17 different pseudonyms across 40 different species academic journals over the last 3,000 years. Nobody ever connected them because nobody expected an immortal human janitor to revolutionize dimensional physics. Velkrin made a sound like a deflating balloon. You are telling me that Professor Threndick's groundbreaking work on quantum dimensional barriers was actually written by you? Guilty, I said. Great guy, Threndix. Let me use his name after I saved his life in a bar fight. He is dead now, obviously. Most people I have known are dead. It is a whole thing. Focus, people. The Void Shepherds are spreading. The monitors showed 5 distinct entities now, each one a hole in reality that moved with terrible purpose. They were heading toward the colony, toward the 3,000 humans and assorted aliens who had no idea what was about to hit them. Activating defense grid in 3, 2, 1. Now. The quantum field generators hummed to life with a sound that was less heard and more felt in your bones. A shimmer appeared in the air around the colony, like looking through heat waves, except these waves existed in about 7 dimensions simultaneously. The lead Void Shepherd hit the barrier and recoiled. It did not make a sound because sound implied physics, but every screen in the bunker flickered, and several people in the colony probably just had the worst migraine of their lives. It is working, Pip breathed. The quantum interference is forcing them to maintain a more fixed dimensional state. They cannot phase through the barrier. It will not hold forever, I warned. They are smart. They will adapt. They always do. Torque was at the weapons console, directing automated plasma turrets that rose from concealed positions around the colony. How do I know where to shoot if they keep shifting? You do not, I said. You shoot where they are going to be. Watch their pattern. They move in predictable cycles when they are hunting. Every 47 seconds, they have to partially solidify to feed. That is when you hit them. How do you know it is 47 seconds? Velkrin asked. Because I counted, I said. For 3 months, in a cave, while eating bats. You do not forget numbers like that. The first volley of plasma fire lit up the afternoon sky. Most of it passed harmlessly through the Void Shepherd's incorporeal forms. But a few shots, timed perfectly with their feeding cycles, connected. The entities recoiled, their forms flickering and destabilizing. You can hurt them, Torque shouted triumphantly. Hurt, yes. Kill, no, I said. But if we hurt them enough, they will decide we are not worth the effort and move on. The universe is big. Plenty of easier meals out there. Another Void Shepherd manifested, then another. They were coming faster now, drawn by the concentration of conscious minds in the colony. The quantum barriers were holding, but I could see stress fractures forming in the field harmonics. We need more power, Pip said, her hands flying across controls. The generators are running at 98% capacity. I know, I said, pulling up a schematic on my personal data pad. I have got one more trick. It is stupid, dangerous, and will probably destroy half the equipment, but it should buy us enough time. What kind of trick? Velkrin asked suspiciously. The kind where I have been collecting exotic matter for 2,000 years and storing it in magnetically contained pods. Underneath this facility, I said. If we feed it into the generators, it will boost output by about 300% for approximately 10 minutes. And then what? Torque demanded. And then either the Void Shepherds leave, or we all die in a spectacular explosion that will be visible from orbit, I said cheerfully. But hey, at least it will be memorable. You are insane, Velkrin said. I am 12,000 years old, I corrected. Insanity is relative. Pip, start the feed sequence. Torque, maximize fire rate on all turrets. Velkrin, calculate the colony evacuation routes in case this goes really wrong. You said evacuation would not work. It will not. But it will make you feel useful while we all die together. I activated the exotic matter feed. The bunker shook. The quantum field generators screamed. The barriers around the colony blazed with light across multiple spectrums, some of which probably should not exist in normal space. The Void Shepherds did not like that. They swarmed the barriers, their forms becoming more solid as they tried to break through. That made them easier targets. Torque was firing constantly now, the plasma turrets burning hot enough that coolant alarms were blaring across every console. 7 minutes left on the boost, Pip reported. A Void Shepherd got close enough to the barrier that its presence started warping reality around it. A section of the colony's outer wall aged instantly, crumbling to rust and dust. But the barrier held, barely. They are adapting, I said, watching their patterns shift. They are learning the barrier's frequency. We need to randomize the quantum harmonics. That will destabilize the entire field. Velcrin protested. So we're letting them through, I pointed out. Do it. Pip made the adjustments. The barrier flickered, wavered, and for a moment I thought I had just killed everyone. Then it stabilized into a new pattern, one that shifted constantly, never staying on the same frequency for more than a few seconds. The Void Shepherds pulled back, their forms flickering with what I had learned to recognize as frustration. They circled the colony, probing for weaknesses, but the randomized field was too chaotic to predict. 3 minutes, Pip called out. Come on, I muttered. Come on, you interdimensional parasites. Decide we are too much trouble. There are easier galaxies to feed on. 2 minutes, 1 minute, the Void Shepherds began to fade. Not all at once, but slowly their forms becoming less solid, less present. They were leaving. 30 seconds. The last Void Shepherd lingered, its incomprehensible form hovering just outside the barrier like it was memorizing us, learning from us. Then it too faded, collapsing back into whatever impossible space it called home. Exotic matter depleted, Pip said. Generators shutting down to safe levels. The barrier is holding on standard power. We had won. Sort of survived, at least, which was close enough to winning when dealing with cosmic horrors. The next few hours were a bureaucratic nightmare that made fighting interdimensional entities look appealing. Colonial administration wanted explanations. The Galactic Council wanted reports. Everybody wanted to know why the janitor had a secret underground military facility. I was sitting in what passed for the colony administrator's office, fielding questions from people who clearly wished I would go back to being ignorable. So let me get this straight, Administrator Krell said, her 3 eyes rotating independently to express maximum exasperation. You are immortal. You have been alive for 12,000 years. You have been running unauthorized military operations on colonial soil. And you just happen to save us all from monsters nobody has heard of? Yes, I said. Also, your environmental controls are going to fail again in about 3 days. The plasma conduit on level 7 has a stress fracture. I have been meaning to fix it, but I have been busy with the whole apocalypse thing. Velcrin was there too, looking like someone who had discovered their entire worldview was written in disappearing ink. The academic implications alone are staggering. Your research, your experiences, you could revolutionize our understanding of dimensional physics, xenobiology, human history, ... Pass, I said. I have done the whole academic celebrity thing. It ends badly. Every time. What are we supposed to report to the Galactic Council? Torque asked. He was the only one who looked less stressed than before, probably because shooting things always improved his mood. Tell them it was a localized spatial anomaly, I suggested. Happens all the time. Nothing to worry about. Definitely do not mention the 12,000-year-old immortal human or the interdimensional parasites. Nobody likes paperwork that complicated. Pip was still taking notes. She had not stopped taking notes for 6 hours. What about the other bunkers? You said you have 132 of them. Yup, I confirmed. All fully stocked, all ready for the next crisis. Which, statistically speaking, should be in about another 10,000 years give or take. I will probably still be around for that one too. Lucky me. This is highly irregular, Administrator Krell said. I should report you for unauthorized construction, weapons possession, and about 17 other violations. You could, I agreed. Or you could remember that I just saved 3,000 lives and call it even. Also, I fix your environmental controls for free. Try finding another maintenance worker who will do that. She glared at me with all three eyes, which was impressive. You are still going to work here? Where else would I go? I asked. I like it here. Quiet, boring. Nobody asks too many questions. Well, until you people started digging up my old warnings. Velkrin was not done. You have to share your knowledge. Think of the scientific advancement, the lives that could be saved. I have shared my knowledge, I said patiently. 47 times across various civilizations. Know what happens? People weaponize it, fight wars over it, and generally make things worse. Or they try to replicate my immortality and kill themselves in horrible experiments. Hard pass on round 48. So you are just going to go back to being a janitor? Pip asked. That is the plan, I confirmed. Fix things, keep my head down, maybe carve another warning somewhere for the next group of archaeologists to find in 10,000 years. It is a simple life. Torque actually smiled, which was terrifying on Avraxian. You do realize we cannot just ignore this. You have classified technology, unauthorized weapons, and you are a potential security risk. I have been a potential security risk for 12,000 years, I pointed out. So far, I have saved more lives than I have endangered. My track record is pretty good. Administrator Krell sighed, a sound that conveyed the weight of administrative frustration across species barriers. Fine, you can stay. But you are going to properly register those bunkers, submit to regular inspections, and for the love of all that is bureaucratic, please stop carving cryptic warnings on ancient monuments. I will think about it, I said. That is not a yes. It is the best you are going to get. I left the office before they could ask more questions. Outside, the colony was returning to normal. People went about their lives completely unaware of how close they had come to being cosmic appetizers. That was fine. I preferred it that way. Pip caught up with me as I headed back toward the maintenance shed. Mr. Webb, wait. Just Marcus, I said. Mr. makes me feel old. You are 12,000 years old. Fair point. She held out her data pad. I wanted to ask, off the record, what is it like? Living that long? Watching everything change? Everyone die? I thought about it for a moment. Honestly, mostly boring. There are exciting bits, sure, but 90% of immortality is just existing. Watching seasons change, learning new languages. Figuring out how to pay taxes in societies that did not have taxes the last time you checked. The trick is finding things that matter, even temporarily. Fixing things, helping people, leaving warnings that may or may not be helpful in 10,000 years. Do you ever get lonely? All the time, I admitted. But you get used to it. And every few centuries, you meet people who make the loneliness worth it. Then they die, and you get to be sad for a while. Then you do it again, because what else are you going to do? She nodded slowly. Thank you. For saving us. You are welcome, I said. Now, if you will excuse me, I have got about 40 maintenance requests backed up. And somebody has to fix the plasma conduit on level 7 before it explodes. I walked back to the maintenance shed, downloaded my backlog of repair orders, and got to work. Just another day in the life of an immortal janitor. The void shepherds were gone, the crisis was averted, and somewhere in the colony, someone's toilet was probably backing up. Some things never change even across 12,000 years. Although, I should probably check the celestial calculations again. The void shepherds had never been early before. That was new, that was concerning. But that was also a problem for future Marcus. Present Marcus had toilets to fix. I pulled out my plasma torch, opened up the access panel, and got back to work. Somewhere in my tool belt, I kept a small chisel. Just in case I needed to carve another warning. You know, for next time,